of Partnership for National Unity list of candidates. The honor is mine to inform you that the name Mr. Ernest Elliott was extracted from the list, and Mr. Elliott was on the 7th of April 2014 declared to be an elected member of the National Assembly. Before Mr. Elliott can take part in the proceedings of the Assembly, he will have to make petitions, presentation of papers and reports, etc. Reports from committees, oral questions without notice, questions on notice, statements by ministers including policy statements, personal explanations, requests for leave to move the adjournment of the National Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance, motions relating to the business or sittings of the National Assembly, moved by Minister. Introduction of bills, public business, government's business.
Honourable members, we will now resume the debate on the budget for 2014. This is the last day for the debate proper. And so I invite Mr. Kemraj Prakash Ramjatan to
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And we are here gathered again in this August Assembly, Mr. Speaker, to debate the 2014 budget. And I must state at the very inception that it is necessary that the necessary protocols be announced, and that is largely that our finance minister must be congratulated for managing in a very difficult, challenging set of circumstances, nationally and internationally, for presenting the budget as he did. That does not, however, mean that there will not be criticisms, constructive criticisms of that from this side, from the Alliance for Change, that is going to endeavor with the purpose of ensuring that we all come to what I would regard a national consensus that will make the life of ordinary Guyanese a better one. All Guyana, as the theme is, having their lives far more improved than exists as of today. And that is why I want initially to make a preambular point that indeed we like to boast as to where we are today as against where we were some years ago. But it is still important to point that the important question that should be asked is, are we where we are supposed to be? That's the important question. On the last occasion that I stood here and spoke at the National Assembly in relation to budget, and that was last year, and I've been doing so for some 20 years and more now, I indicated that if this government were to tighten up, the opposition is going to lighten up. Over the years, however, we have seen a total lack of that tightening up. And it is in that activity of not tightening up that the Alliance for Change, and I know the APNU, have done what they have done. It has the national interest at heart, fundamentally. And it is not as if we are politically grandstanding and it's going to shout down simply because we see persons across the aisle as people who we do not appreciate. This country belongs to all of us, and all of us must be participants in its glory. I feel that this budget could have been a far superior budget had there been the incorporation of the views of the opposition. And it is not as if the opposition views are not known. We have indicated to the government side a number of things that we would like to see since last year, when we had our tripartite talks, when we indicated so many things in that list of items that the AFC gave to the government side, APNU gave to the government side. And we are of the view that by virtue of this exclusion from the process, notwithstanding, and I concede, as mentioned yesterday and quoting from Paul McGee, Stephen McGee, I think, it is the right of the government side to prepare the budget. But when we do have a dispensation where there is a majority on the opposition side, because of that newness and novelty of the circumstance, it is incumbent on a government that would like to see things happen, that there be what is called inclusiveness on the part of the government of opposition views. In a minority government, there must be multi-party governance by necessity. And it is not a multi-party governance that is of the status that we have to be as members of the cabinet. Not here. Make our points, but we want our points to be given consideration. We want our points to be deliberated on. And to that extent, the non-incorporation of the views of the opposition has sunk this budget to the level of one which there are tremendous criticisms of. I want to make the very first point here, and it came on the very first day when Dr. Vindi Prasad indicated, what's wrong with this opposition that is going to use the scissors on the budget to deny people of Guyana certain benefits? Well, I want to tell the House, and especially direct this remark to the Honourable Member, that we must appreciate that even if the opposition is going to use its scissors, we have in this budget, at its preparatory stage, hatchet and shares being used in it prior to it coming here. The cuts that were made because of all the revenue streams not coming into the consolidated fund so that we can have a fair grasp of how much revenues we have so that we can disburse and expend was never accurately represented in this budget. I have made this point since 2012, and indeed because it continues to happen, I have to continuously make it. We are told that we largely have what is called approximately $208 billion to spend. But if we were to put all the revenue streams into this budget, we would have lots more than that. And in the approximation of the experts that have indicated to me what it should be, it is in the vicinity of more than $50 billion that was cut prior to this budget being laid here in this Honourable Assembly.
Wow.
Monies are being hived off into certain accounts that belong, Mr. Speaker, to certain statutory agencies, statutory bodies, and I would like to quote them. The Guyana Forestry Commission, and at page 597, one is going to see this, their balances as of 31st December 2013 total sum $1,034 million. That was never put in the consolidated fund. Guyana Geology and Mines Commission. Bank balance end of 2013 calculation is $12,625,000,000. Guyana Laws, Lands and Surveys Commission, an additional 365, and it is at page 600 of volume 1. Guyana Civil Aviation Authority, 742 million, page 605 of volume 1 again. Central Housing and Planning Authority, $2.7 billion, page 616. Of course, we have the Lotto funds, $1.1 billion. And NISIL, of course, NISIL always, 9 billion and even more. Now, these bodies have government monies, what is called public monies under the Constitution and the Financial Management and Accountability Act. That alone totals some $27.7 billion that is not there. And I want to give this analogy. It is like a husband who is the income earner giving the housewife not the total sum that he earns. So he then goes and says that I only earn, actually he earns $100,000, I only earn $60,000. And with that the housewife has to go pay rent and do all the necessary things to the extent of only $60,000. He having hived off a further 40. And this is what we have here in this budget. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, we will then not be in the position to know what is there in the consolidated fund so that we in this National Assembly, in accordance with constitutional provisions and the standing orders, would be in a position to know how much we can spend and what. So when they are going to go do their propaganda and the GINA, they must understand that when the opposition is saying that they will use their scissors, a big chop on the wings, literally, of this economy and how much it really has in the treasury has been made at the preparatory stage. It is very, very brutal to the extent that so much have been chopped off. And then I ask the question, what is wrong with a government that is going to do that kind of axing of a huge set of monies? Everything is wrong. Everything is wrong. In addition to those sums that I spoke about there just now, we have from the Auditor General's report of 2012 a number of agencies that have bank balances that have not been put into the consolidated fund. Although the Honorable Auditor General makes it clear that these sums ought to be put in there because they're transferable into the consolidated fund. I want to quote from the Auditor General's report of 2012. And it is at page 9. It is executive summary at page Roman 6. He makes mention of it, but it is expanded at page 9. The audit offices, and this is the paragraph 21. The audit office's assessment of the balances held in special accounts of Bank of Guyana indicate 11 accounts with balances totaling approximately $4.1 billion appear to be funds transferable to the consolidated fund, but they have not been transferred, Mr. Speaker. And these include the Infrastructural Development Fund account, what is called the Accountant General G.C. Wartsil account, the Agriculture Sector Loan account, CIMAPS account, Financial Sector Reform Program account. And then of course we have some other static accounts, the Japanese non-project grant aid, CARICOM headquarters project, and so on. And that's at page 10. The ministry's response, and this was 2012 because we haven't gotten the report as yet, is that they're making considerable effort to transfer these monies into the consolidated fund. What is it that is such a big effort for one to transfer these monies when at the behest of the Auditor General it is a requirement and an instruction from that high authority in relation to our revenues that it be done. The recommendation of the Auditor General is that the Audit Office once again recommends to the Ministry of Finance urgently review the status of these accounts with a view paying it into the consolidated fund. So apart from the $28 billion that I mentioned of NISIL and Lotto and GGMC and all of that, we have an additional $4 billion in bank accounts at the Bank of Guyana. Surging with money, $4 billion of it. It is not there in the consolidated fund. So that we now, in this August Assembly, like the Board of Directors in a corporate entity, having the Treasurer come forward and saying that this is what the income that we have, members of the Board, and then the members of the Board, as a matter of policy, making the disbursements based on that true, genuine reflection of the state of our revenue. So the cut is made long before we are here. And that must be appreciated, because unless we have all that is there in the consolidated fund, we will not have a true representation of the state of our finances. So then, members who are going to be critical of us, who are going to run to the television station and do the hue and cry that the AFC and APNO have cut the budget, I want the point to be made that billions have been hatcheted and acted and shared. This is very important, Mr. Speaker, and it is not for a want of the governing party cabinet not knowing about these things. They know, and that is first of all then a huge flaw of this budget. No true depiction of what the state of our revenues are, to the extent then that we can have an ability to make the assessments as to where the priorities should go. This budget will have a deficit in the vicinity of some $32 billion. And it is always the pride of the founder leader of the PDP that budgets must, as best as possible, be balanced. If we had these incomes from those sources coming in, that will total in the vicinity of approximately $32 billion too. The 28 plus the 4, that is the budget. But no, says the Minister of Finance. No, says the Cabinet. Leave it there in the static accounts. Leave it there in the statutory bodies. And these apparently are not public monies anymore for the public, through its representatives in this Parliament, to spend. No. They are going to spend it as they want. And that is why recognized academics, and even one who was there as an Auditor General, recently made the remark that we have a parallel treasury in the form of these sums of monies. Mr. Gulsaran, Dr. Gulsaran, has indicated in a publication he did only about 2-3 days ago how we are having what is called the creation of a parallel treasury. This is wrong. Articles 216 and 217 is saying that all these monies must go into the consolidated fund, as I've been urging, so that we can have a better hand at what will be spent and what will be known. And it is through these funds I would want to deduct that a lot of additional spendings without what is called National Assembly's approval is being carried out. It is through these bank accounts monies that we probably have the marriage still going on. Because obviously we don't know where it is that they're carrying on with the project as is. And that is wrong. Every major capital project in this country which is going to utilize public monies must have the National Assembly's approval. But we don't have, let's say, in relation to the Marriott Hotel. And a whole set of monies from what is called the public purse has gone there without National Assembly's approval. Now, when you're going to do bypass mechanisms like these, you are going to anger your legally elected representatives of the National Assembly, that is then going to cause a vexation of the spirit to demand them citizenship in relation to all the because it is like a con game on the housewife with that kind of a deceptive husband. It is going to anger the housewife when she now has to struggle with just the 60,000 when the income is 100. And I want that point to be brought because I'm going to bring it constantly here. And especially as we are seeing when our constitutional office holder, the Auditor General, is making these claims that these monies must be placed there. We see, in addition, Mr. Speaker, other revenue streams that are being denied the budgetary process. Take, for example, and we read about it recently in Jamaica, the spectrum was sold for $25 million US. That's money that will go into the Consolidated Fund of Jamaica. Spectrum here in Guyana. We put in the Telecommunications Act who and who will get licenses for these things without any payment. What? Without any payment. What we are saying here is that friends and family members and close associates are going to be beneficiaries when indeed, if it is of something of value that you ought to sell, so that when they get that sale price, the monies will come into our treasury. And you have what is called a denial of the treasury collecting that which would have raised that consolidated fund even more. We see also natural resources, and I will come to that later on in connection with forestry and mining resources, going at what is called extraordinary low rates in relation to concessions and so on. That is going to deny the revenue streams that would ordinarily have been there to the quantum that the market rates would have demanded. And that is important. We have a huge set of other areas where monies are denied. One of which is billions out of exemption and tax concessions granted to certain investors. And when one asks the question as to why certain investors are getting these tax exemptions and concessions, in a number of areas, duty-free this and duty-free that. And of course, I appreciate that for incentivizing our investors, foreign and local, that yes indeed, but the thing is not rational. And we notice a whole set of exemptions and concessions being granted that are denying Guyanese a better day for them. Mr. Speaker, that is but a huge flaw in this budget presented again in 2014. We feel, Mr. Speaker, that that must come to an end. It must be brought to an end simply because our Constitution says that all public monies must go into the consolidated. And of course, as the very garrulous Attorney General would state, Constitution is supreme. Constitution is supreme. But when it comes to the finances, it could be scattered about for them to spend as they want. And that which indicates that it should be in the budget be hived off. Mr. Speaker, we must not have parallel treasuries in Guyana, not from the year 2014. It must stop. And when the opposition is going to make the point that it should be halted, please, members of the government side, listen up. Don't go and say that we are chopping the budget when we know that you are chopping it 10 times more, tenfold more. That's why we can't have monies then for the old age pensioner increasing to $15,000 as we demand. With that $50 billion and more, and I think that is all across the bank accounts and NISIL and wherever, that is denying the people their rightful due that could make Guyana a better place. Mr. Speaker, a lot of talk also was done by members of the government indicating how great we are as a nation today as against what was before. But I want to say that the point must be made that a lot of Guyanese are leaving this country. And their migration levels are so high today that the government does not want to bring out the census report to show what really our population is. It is very opaque when it comes to giving that information so that we can know where we really stand. We feel that this rate of migration, and I think it is at there is a page in the budget speech, I think it is page 79. Net migration per month, it is almost 1,000 per month people leaving in Guyana, net. We have then a population growth that is obviously declining, 2.7%. It is in the budget speech of the Honorable Minister. It is, to that extent. But the whole point of it, make up your mind. You don't want to give us the census because a census will give a lot more information as to the poverty levels of Guyanese. The point I am making, Mr. Speaker, and you see how he's jumping like a kangaroo already?
Mr. Ramadan, stay to your speech, please. Stay to your speech.
We would know whether indeed the poverty rates
In Guyana, the appropriate analogy would be like a huri.
like a hurry. Yes.
But we're not going to have any of
Out of water.
Yes.
Out of water.
And so we do have, Mr. Speaker, this very damning figure coming out because, of course, the Honorable Minister had to state something about our net migration rate. It has always been there. But the census will obviously give us lots more information as to a number of other things that we can make better assessments in conveying to the population what are the priorities on spending should be. And we only have to go, I think it was the Economic Forum that mentioned the high migration of skilled labor from Guyana. So when they regale themselves that we are doing fantastic in relation to job creation and all of that, we are not getting the true picture. We are not getting the true picture. And so, though our decline population-wise is the highest in the Caribbean at 2.7%, we cannot progress as a nation when so much skilled workers are leaving to the extent of about 1,000 per month. That is why in the sugar industry, that is why in so many other spheres of activity, we are not getting the quality people. They are overseas. And in the previous, there is a previous speech that I had made where it would appear that we are just manufacturing skills for other countries. We are outsourcing our greatest asset, that is our human resource. And that is why a number of the industry, especially sugar, is in the state where it is. I will come back to sugar just now. But these kinds of facts can't be disputed. These kinds of facts, as are in the estimates and in the budget speech and those schedules to them, can't be disputed. And Mr. Speaker, it does go to show what it is that an opposition duly elected are being denied of, to the extent then that our inputs into it are going to be somewhat not complete, incomplete as it were. Mr. Speaker, I want to indicate too that there was lots of talk about this job creation and all of that. But we have to do a lot of research to find out indeed if that is true. And one of the indicators to know whether so much jobs have been created is to go to your NIS registration data. And we have gone there. And the NIS registration data would tell us, because indeed, Mr. Speaker, it logically flows that if we are having plenty employment and they're saying it is good quality employment, big monies and middle class size monies are coming, the jobs that are being created, why then in the NIS registration data we only have literally 1,000 employed persons being the number for each year since 2009. In 2009, active at the end of the year, people paying NIS, national insurance, is 1,000. Then it's about 1,100 from 2011. Then it's another 1,000 more for 2013 from 2012. What we have here is an indicia or an index in relation to how much employment is being created. And I am of the view that indeed, unless of course you are saying that the NIS is not collecting its dues and those are still not being active, you would tell me that look, these figures are all statistics and statistics and stilts. Statistics and statistics and stilts. They are not of the first category, what we call lies. 1,000 as per active at the end of each year, and I've gotten the numbers from since 1990 in this document taken from NIS. So this hue and cry again that we're doing wonderful is not reflected in an institution that it ought to be reflected in. And so you're going to say, oh, they're not paying. That now comes to another question that I want to develop a little later on our rule of law. Why then do we have so many non-registered? What is the NIS doing? Why then the actuarial report is saying that you must at least go after people who have to pay their NIS and you're not doing it? So you have statistics here that is going to show something otherwise, but in your rebuttal you're saying, oh, they're not actually paying. This is very, very wrong, Mr. Speaker. This is all budget. This is all budget because we want to be a constructive critic here as to what you're talking about. And so what you're talking about, obviously then, by a logical deduction, a misrepresentation.
You have 1990 records, Comrade. Get 24.
And so it is important. Well, we don't have the records of 2014. You can't have the records of 2014 on the NIS registration. It is important that this here be the record. And you are going to say whatever you want, Mr. Kennedy. You see how garrulous he is? Has a sharp, sharp tongue. And so on. But if he could only pay attention with that sharpness on actual facts as to employment rates, actual facts in relation to the revenues, our country would have been a better one. That must not, obviously, must not be allowed to work here. Mr. Speaker, it is important. Well, you see, it's going to get personal now. I would have been the first that the NIS would have come to, knowing that I'm on opposition, that they fear badly, that they would come in charge. I pay the highest rates of NIS, and my staff pay the highest rates. There is one person that should know that it is pre-manic and that's the work. That's the
Members, this is going in a direction that is bringing dispute to the House. And I would ask that we not go down this road, please. It is becoming personal, and that comes
from resignations. You probably want my resignation.
And so let us please allow Mr. Ramadan to make his presentation as he intended to originally. Proceed, Mr. Ramadan.
Please don't resign.
Thank you, I will not. And even heckles from my learned friend, not going to make me resign. I come now, Mr. Speaker, to a very important aspect of this sojourn to accountability, and that is the Procurement Commission. We know that this country has a lot of corruption. The corruption is stated in the Auditor General's report. Corruption not only in relation to what the Ministry of Finance has done with hiving off the money, but dealing with a lot of things like contingencies fund at page 7 of the Auditor General report. Advance continues to be issued from the contingencies fund which does not meet the required criteria for such advances. He goes on to say that there are massive overpayment to contractors at page 7. A significant amount of overpayment to contractors has occurred on works. This is 2012, the latest one. Page 7. You see it? Yes, you got it there. Paragraph 9. Paragraph 9, page 7, Roman 7. Roman 7, Mr. Minister. Do you see it? Yes.
to the chair, please.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And in paragraph 6, Roman 7, what the Ministry of Finance is doing in relation to the contingencies fund. Key findings relating to ministries and departments, overpayment to contractors. I hope that, Mr. Speaker, a second look might be taken by the Minister of Finance on these issues. And they're also talking about compliance with store regulations. A number of ministries, departments and regions have been found in breach of the store's regulation, but it would appear that this government just can't store properly. They put it all over the place. And so the inventory as to what government property is not reflected. Again, other specific findings has to do with the number of monies that are not collected. Huge sets of money. In one case, over $2 million for Guyana stores, as he mentioned. Of course, we do have litigation going on. He says that. Yes, Guyana Stores Limited was sold for some money, and we have it here. Certain money is not being collected. Now, Mr. Speaker, extending and developing these executive summary points of the Auditor General are pages thereafter, which he states clearly. I do not want to go into them because they but give greater amplitude to that which was in the executive summary. But we come back now to a procurement commission that is but another aspect that has to deal directly with monies and how monies are spent this time. Not how the revenue streams come into the country. Mr. Speaker, this country went into literally a civil war in the 1999-2000 era. And it came as a result of elections, as we all know, and then the Hermanston Accord, where Caribbean leaders had to come to our country, and then they developed constitutional reform, one such reform being the establishment of the Procurement Commission. It came as a result, as we all know, because we have lived through the experience of the stone scam, the milk scam, a number of scams that occurred in 1991, 92 period, 2001 year. And we have this scenario where then, again, as the Attorney General would want us to now be heckled off, the point I'm trying to, yeah, that was another one. We fought for that. It was included and provided for in 212W of the Constitution. And that government of which I was a part in 2001 indicated that later down the year we are going to establish and make operational that procurement commission, because that procurement commission is going to be the body that is going to police procurement matters, all matters. What we have today, after some 13 years, none of those provisions have become operational by virtue of the establishment, that is, the operationalization of the procurement commission. Today we have, however, the Junior Minister of Finance saying that the thing too pricey. It will be something too pricey to establish and operationalize.
Yeah.
Well, if we were to do a comparison,
Mr. Speaker, while I noticed that was a headline in the newspapers, I never said that in this house. And I will not.
Very well, but if you did say it outside of the house, then it should be before. Go ahead, Mr.
you see, this
If it was said at some, it's like, for example, we quote from newspapers, so if it was said outside, the main thing is, if it was said outside,
it was too expensive, he said, his word was too
but that's
expensive.
just understanding.
Yes, thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker, the point the Bishop is making is that this was a newspaper headline. It's not quoting him, it was an editorial choice of
I
words.
haven't seen it in in other words,
No,
the
Bishop
bishop used,
Adair is a member.
Mr. Ramadan, is it that the bishop used words?
The bishop used the word from what I honorable bishop. Bishop Edger, Honorable Bishop Edger, used words that it is too expensive to go and have that established now. I want to tell him, because I could withdraw the word price if he's saying that he didn't say so.
That's a euphemism for.
That's right, too expensive.
Mr. Speaker, we can go back to the transcript. This is what I said to the House. I brought the figures cases that the procurement commission would have been handling for the period.
No, you didn't say that.
That's
expensive.
okay.
Come on. But whatever it is.
Mr. Ramadan, find a choice of words.
Moreover,
Mr. Ramadan, find a choice of words to proceed, please.
yes. It is important, Mr. Speaker, to understand that since those days, 2001, and then in 2003 when we passed the Procurement Act to give teeth to the constitutional provisions, we haven't seen the establishment and the operationalization of the Procurement Commission. Now that's a constitutional mandate. That's a constitutional requirement. There shall be established a Procurement Commission. What we have of recent times, since we have been making the call that it must be established and operationalized, first of all, is that we do not want to deny ourselves the objection, no objection clause. And after 10 years or more, they're now coming with that they have to have this no objection clause. When the Procurement Commission said clearly in Section 54, and as we all know, I debated it here, that indeed I had a role to play. That role was that indeed, after the establishment of the Procurement Commission and its operationalization, Cabinet's role shall be zero to the extent of the awards. Now they come and they say that they have to change that Section 54. The government side. And the whole point of it, Mr. Speaker, is that they do not want to have this Procurement Commission for the simple reason that they want the continuation of gorging at the trough. That is what they want. Imagine you have the thing being established in 2001-2003 period for the simple purpose of ensuring that there is more transparency, that there is more accountability. And then 2004, 2005, 2000, right up to 2011, when they were in government, they did not put it up. At a majority level, they did not put it up. When they're in a minority state now, they come and they say, you know what? This policeman called Procurement Commission, we don't want him. We don't want him. And so that is what you were saying recently. The policeman is that you don't want it because, as I said, more now that when we are trying, and we are always consensus building, we tell them in the government that we are going to do what is called an amendment to Section 54 to give them a status, complainant status. No, says the cabinet. We don't want that. We want the no objection, which is in accordance, not in accordance with Section 54 of the existing Act. But this is what the new thing now, new proposal as to why it should not be operationalized. Only 24 complaints and 25 will come to the whole year. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Bishop Edger is going to say that 24 was now, but it's because we don't have the policeman, people are not complaining to it. Otherwise, we would have gotten hundreds of complaints. We would have had hundreds of complaints. But little did Mr. Manager, Honorable Member, did not realize too that there are other functions of the Procurement Commission. It shall rewrite the laws in relation to procurement and advise the National Assembly. Literally that. The Constitution makes provision in a certain article that laws are to review the laws and bring it to the National Assembly. That's an important one. But you know, and also, Mr. Speaker, not only the laws, but guidelines, criteria, and so on for those that are going to bid for projects. But you know, they don't like that too. But they're going to get their tender boards to go and write up the guidelines, like the one that was recently done that we brought to the press in relation to pharmaceuticals. So that friends and family and those who are very close to them will forever be the ones that will benefit from those criteria. It is smart. That's right. They do not want to stop the gravy train. The qualification in 2013 in relation to pharmaceuticals was again changed so that the goalpost could be narrowed so that only one footballer could stomp the ball inside. You're going to get a $50 million revenue income tax base. You've got to do a whole set of other things. When it is looked upon, there's only one person to get it. Only one person, and we all know that person. And Mr. Speaker, they are then going to grab. You know the man. I know the man. I really know the man.
Honorable member, you will need an extension.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to move that the honourable member be given another 15 minutes to complete his wonderful presentation.